Hello and welcome to Higginsanity. I'm your host, Jason Higgins.
I'm your co-host Dan Slott, and we are ready to go.
Today we are talking about NBA basketball. It's one of the most exciting times of the season. Always after All-Star break, everything picks up, and I want to say a special thank you to Adam Silver for the play-in tournament that's happening because every game is competitive. Every game, well, when I say every game, because on Sunday the Warriors did get beat by like 40 plus by the Celtics, and then they turn around and win by 30 last night. So every once in a while we have those games, but to be honest, like the standings and everything now, it's a crazy time to be watching NBA basketball.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff's been happening with the trade deadline and all that stuff, and then the race to the playoffs. So, like you said, every game should be a good game, but everybody lays an egg every once in a while.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited because I don't know. With the trade deadline, there was a few teams that they picked up some really good pieces for their team. There's a couple teams I thought maybe they should have picked up some pieces, but didn't.
Hmm.
But the hometown team, the Indiana Pacers, for example, they were able to pick up Pascal Siakam, which I think is a huge help for the Pacers. I think they needed another guy that can get them a basket when they come down the floor. I know Tyrese since All Star break with his hamstring hasn't been to what he's has been all season, but he's starting to pick it up in the last game or so. There's a lot of good trade pieces.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Mavs with their additions. They're up and down. It just kind of depends, but I think they'll get it together. It seems like they're always when the playoffs are on the line, they always pull through, make a good run. Um, but the Knicks just need to get healthy.
Yes, 100%. They had a good trade, and I feel like at one point they were fourth in the East, and now I mean, they had the injury bug. I mean, when you have four starters that are out, you're not going to win at this time in the NBA, and
Right.
I mean, it's like it all happened at one time.
Yep. What do you think about the Heat? Because they are looking good, except for they added Terry Rozier, and he's not.
So I'm interested because it seems like every year, the last what 3, 4, 5 years, the Heat have been towards the seventh, eighth seed, been towards the end, and then towards the end of the season they really pick it up. Last season, for example, they come in, they're in the play-in tournament, and then boom, you see them. They're extending all the way to the end of the playoffs. So, I mean, you got teams like that, and it's the Heat culture. So, I mean, you can never really. That's one of those teams where when it comes playoff time, that's a team you never want to see because their defensive ability, and then Jimmy Butler is just a whole different caliber player when it comes playoff time.
Yeah. What do you think of Jimmy Butler? Like just as like a personality.
He cracks me up. I mean, just from like the beginning press conferences at the beginning of the season where he had like the emo band My Chemical Romance haircut going down, where I don't know if you saw that, to where he had his hairdo like that, and
Mm-hmm.
then like for all I've heard, he's a really good teammate and everything. He's just got that dog in him when he's on the court. He's very competitive. He don't take no ish from nobody. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like that would be a guy who you would want on your team at
I
any
feel
given
like
moment.
I love him. I think he's awesome, especially like you've mentioned twice, in the playoffs. And I always feel like they fall short because he doesn't have enough supporting cast around him. Like he can't do everything. And I feel like his teammates just kind of look to him and be like, "All right, it's your time to shine. Go do it." It's like even the best players have a supporting cast.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they need just like one more like secondary, not even a star, but just like consistent player in the playoffs, and they haven't had it recently.
Mm-hmm. You're right, and like for example, the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, you look at not last year, but a couple years ago, you had Luca who single-handedly took the Mavs, to the
Yeah.
playoffs. Single-handedly beat the Phoenix Suns. The year before that, he's single-handedly against the Clippers because Porzingis was, injured during the playoffs that year.
Yeah.
This year, this team that's around him, when you have Kyrie, you picked up trade pieces like Gafford and PJ Washington. You got Tim Hardaway Jr. You got guys like Josh Green, and you got guys like Darren Jones who can play defense, slash, and get to the rim. So I think this team right here for the Dallas Mavericks is Luka's greatest chance since he's been on Dallas to make a run at the playoffs.
Yeah.
And they had a 7-game winning streak. And that's the thing with the Mavs is they can win 7-8 games in a row. And then, for example, these last 5 games, they lose 3 or 4 out of 5. So
Yeah.
it's just they're up and down, and but again, do you really want to see Luka and Kyrie in a playoff series if you're the other
Right.
team?
And to your point, like Luca, one player can carry a team for a few games or for like a playoff run, but it takes a toll on that player. Like eventually they're going to run out of steam. They can't do it by themselves for, weeks at a time. So that's awesome if you have that player that can turn it on. But, once he starts to cool off or, he's not putting the team on his back anymore, like who's going to step up?
Right.
And to your point, are they going to be able to do that? Are they going to be able to be behind Luca? And if he does play like he did last year and get them to the playoffs, by himself, is he going to have that team surrounding him? And it looks like they do this year. So that's going to be interesting to watch.
And I know Luka's very strong on ball. I mean, he's basically almost averaging a triple-double. I mean, he's playing at MVP. I mean, he's, MVP candidate this year easily. I just think, again, when you have Kyrie, I think a little bit more off the ball to where Kyrie's a little bit more on the ball, just to switch up things a little bit. I mean, Luka's doing a fantastic job, I think, this year, and the pace is getting a lot faster, and Luka and Kyrie are playing great along each other. But at times, when you do watch the Mavs, at times they do get a little stagnant because they wait for Luka to make this extravagant play because when he's coming off a ball screen, he's got 2-3 guys on him, and then he'll make some ridiculous behind the back pass to the corner for a shot.
Yeah. And when a team does get stagnant like that, especially in the age of analytics, it makes them one dimensional, and you have to change it up. I mean, as much as I don't like him, I respect him as a football coach, is Belichick. I mean, you might think you have him, behind the 8 ball, you might have him figured out, and then he comes out in the second half, plays a completely different game. And you got to do that in all sports, including basketball. Like if you become one dimensional and, if all a team has to do is stop Luka, then, you got to change it up.
You know what team they remind me of?
What's that?
I would say about the 2015-16. I would say the 16-17 Houston Rockets with James
with Harden?
Harden and them because they were tremendously offensively. James Harden, ISO, the ball was in his hands a majority of the time. Yeah, they had CP3 and things like that. Eric Gordon, guys that can shoot. They had guys that could play defense. They had a great roster, and they took the Warriors to 7 games. With KD and Curry and Thompson and whatnot. But again, with them, there's times where James Harden would have the ball 20 out of the 24 seconds on the shot clock. There's times.
And I was gonna say that helped him tremendously until it started to hurt him.
Yes.
Because it was too much Harden.
Yes.
And he got so much praise when he started balling it, started making threes, starting controlling that team, dominating everybody. And then people started to figure it out. And then he got, his I don't want to say his name, but his play style got tarnished a little bit. Like, is he a team player? Can he play with other players? Can he go somewhere else and still dominate or not, So.
Yeah, I know a team really good that, if you look at the team that won the NBA championship last year with the Denver Nuggets, I feel like they check every box on the board. Even this year, I think they still have another team that could, easily get back to the championship, can be a contender when you got guys like Jokic and Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. who can put the ball in the basket. But when you got guys like Jokic who can get other people involved, not just by scoring, but by assists and playmaking, same with Jamal Murray, then you got KCP, and then you got guys that can play defense on that team. So I think them, and if you look at, which has been, it's been a surprise, but then again, it's been not a surprise in a way. The Oklahoma City Thunder. They got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's playing at MVP level this year, who's easily, I think, a top 3 candidate in MVP. Shep Holmgren, 7-footer, possible Rookie of the Year candidate. It's going to be Wemby. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that Wemby is going to be Rookie of the Year when like the other night against the Pacers. I mean, he single-handedly showed why he would be Rookie of the Year.
Right.
But you got, like, for the Thunder, they picked up Gordon Hayward during the trade deadline. You got veterans on that team. You have younger players on that team. You got shooters. You got guys like Lou Dort, who plays extravagant defense. So they, as a team, check all the boxes. And I think the good thing about them being a younger team, and when the veterans that they do have, like Gordon Hayward, etc., there's no big egos. There's nobody that it's like it's them. It's team ball. And they all act like a team. They play as a team, and it shows on the court when they play. And, this was a team that, it's a lot of young guys. Chet Holmgren, didn't play last year. This is his first, really year in the NBA.
Right.
Injuries and whatnot. So you would think maybe this would have taken maybe another year or two before they were at this level. No, here they are, at the top of the West.
Yeah, and a lot of times, if you get a player like Hayward on a young team, he doesn't have to come in and ball out.
Mm-hmm.
He can just come in and just kind of keep everybody focused, keep the rookies, the 1-year, 2-year players just like, hey, we got here playing our game. Keep that up. Don't let all the outside noise, all the media get to you. Just stick to what we're doing. It's worked all season.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel like those trade deadlines in any sport are just that. Be like, hey, we got a chance to get all the way. You see it a lot of times in the NFL, like with a wide receiver or a safety or something who doesn't play a lot of minutes, but he just plays smart. He gets in there, works with whatever position they're playing, and just like keeps them focused. Keep them on the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm. And we're still talking about in the West too. Another team that's surprising is like the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're at the top of the West as well. But I know Karl Anthony Towns, I don't know if you heard the news today, but it looks like he has a torn meniscus. So this is a time also where, it's towards the end of the season. If guys aren't taking care of their bodies the right way, they're coming into playoff time. This is where injuries come to happen. You look at LeBron James, went down last night with an ankle injury.
Seems to happen about around this time every year.
Mm-hmm. So, like, for example, I'll just go down the West standings right now. In the Western Conference, you got, the Timberwolves and OKC are tied, in the first seed at 43-19. You got Denver at 3, Clippers at 4, Pelicans at 5, and Phoenix at 6. 7 through 10 is that, that play-in tournament. You got the Kings, Mavericks, Warriors, and Lakers. If the play-in tournament started today, that's who would be playing in that play-in tournament.
Right.
So if you look at that play-in tournament just right there, just between those 4 teams, you have prime time. You got Hall of Famers in there. If you're looking at this, if you look at the Lakers, you got LeBron James, you got AD, you got D'Angelo Russell, you got the Warriors with Curry, Klay Thompson, CP3, Draymond. You got the Mavericks with Luka and Kyrie. You got the Kings with De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. And so that play-in tournament itself is a freaking battle. And so you come out of that play-in tournament, say, for example, you're the Warriors, say the Warriors and Lakers, make it out of the play-in tournament. If you're the Timberwolves and the Thunder, your first playoff series coming in, especially if you're the OKC Thunder, haven't been in the playoffs in a minute, and your first playoff series is against Steph Curry, your first playoff
I would
series could be against LeBron James.
I was just gonna say if the play-in tournament started now, I wouldn't want to play any of those teams first
No,
round. Any of them.
no.
They all have experience. They all have veterans. They've all been in the playoffs recently, and they're coming in hot. They just won to get into the playoffs. And they're feeling themselves.
Yep. And you look at the sixth seed. The sixth seed, they lose one game, they're back in seventh, eighth
Right.
place, and that's Phoenix with KD, Booker, and Bradley Beal. So
Yep.
that's what's so cool about this play-in tournament now, because used to, when you had seeds 1 through 8, you could kind of see, okay, this is who's coming in. You could kind of have a feeling, okay, first round you can kind of see who's probably gonna get by in the first round. Second round
Right.
it's kind of more of a, okay, this could happen, and then you get to the conference finals. That's when it's more, oh crap, it could be this, it could be this.
Right.
I think this year, that first round, I think any series is up for grab, especially in the
Yeah.
West. Any series is up for grab, I think, in the West.
Yeah. And apologize to the fans, but I keep relating it to football. I think the play-in tournament makes it a little more like football, where it's like even if you have like a first round bye or your second seed, you're still nervous going to that first playoff game because you're playing quality teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some fluffed. Even a team that barely makes the playoff, can take down any team any given day. It's a little different in the NBA because they have a 5 or 7 game series, but still, like you still have to beat a team that's hot and has talent on it.
And those teams that are in the play-in tournament, they could be in that play-in tournament just because of injury basis. I mean, they could just
Mm-hmm.
now get their full team towards the end of the year. And then, so as we kind of look over in the Eastern Conference, if you kind of look in the
Yep.
standings over there, you got the Celtics at 1, you got Bucks at 2, Cavs at 3, Magic at 4, Orlando Magic. I got that song stuck in my head from TikTok every time the Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got the Knicks at 5, which Shaq's birthday. Happy birthday, Shaq, for the Knicks Magic player. I said that before the Knicks. Obviously everybody knows Shaq played for the Magic, Lakers, Heat, Cavs, Celtics. You're welcome. You got the Heat at 6. You got the 76ers at 7. Pacers at 8. Bulls at 9. And Hawks at 10. So obviously, in my point of view, I think the Western Conference, obviously I think that's going to be more of a up in the air on the series and whatnot. I think the Eastern Conference is more of a, you kind of have a feeling in a way towards the end. But there's still a lot of what ifs in the Eastern
I was going to say
Conference.
the
There
Eastern
is.
Conference is, I mean, from 4th seed to 8th seed, there's only, 1 or 2 game difference. So that play-in tournament's going to change a lot between now and playoffs.
Yep.
You got 3 teams with 35 wins and one with 36 and one with 37. And even the Celtics only have 48 and they're leading the conference. So even from the Bucks to the Pacers, it's only a 6-game spread.
And you look at the Knicks, who are, not healthy. You look at the 76ers with Embiid's out until the playoffs. Bulls are without Levine, which the Bulls have played better without Levine. What's really been surprising has been the Hawks this year. When they have Trae Young and Dejounte Murray and guys like that, being 28 and 34, and with a coach like Quinn Snyder, I just don't see that. So that's a team I would kind of watch out for going into the play-in tournament and playoffs, is the Atlanta Hawks, because, Trae Young is one of those guys that can go off for 40, 50 in the night. You know?
I want to bring up 2 things. One, you brought up injuries quite a bit. And, if you've got a team who a player goes down with injury and they go down and they start playing, they win, they're feeling themselves, and then they make the playoffs. Do you reinsert that player or do you just let the team go?
I think for me, it depends on the caliber of player. If it's the Warriors and Curry went down for those few games and they so happen to win those certain games and get back to the series, definitely gonna put Curry back into the game, in that rotation. But
Do you put him in right away or do you let him sit for a game or 2?
it also depends on the injury. I think it
Yeah.
depends on the injury. It depends on what his status is, and whatnot. Because you've had other examples with other teams to where guys come in and they get that PT, they get that playing time, and they show what they can do, and then they take over and they actually earn a spot, or they play really good for that season because this guy or this guy went out, and now they get a nice contract and they're on another team that following season.
Yeah.
But I think that's also important as when you're a GM or coach or whatever, and you're running this team, and you're looking for guys in the off season or you guys at the trade deadline or vice versa. I think the injury history with certain players is a big thing
Oh
to
yeah.
look at, but also when you're building a big three, like if you look at Phoenix for example, everyone thought Phoenix would be at a higher seed just because of the big three of Beal, Booker, and KD. But unfortunately, the injuries that's happened this year, Booker's been out, several games. Beal's been out, a lot of the season,
Mhm.
and because of that, because of the salary cap and the way they've changed the finances ever since the KD Warriors situation, it's hard to pay guys and build a team around a big three because of that salary cap, that hard cap, and things of that nature. So, are you as a GM looking to get two all-star players, two solid caliber players, and looking to get more of a could be an all-star, could be not, and then four or five other good caliber players, or do you want to get three primetime all-star players and then seven could be on a team, could not be on a team type player?
See, I don't know. If it was me, I feel like every team wants a star, right? They
Mm-hmm.
want a franchise player. So I think every team's looking for that. And if you can get that, then I think you need like not like three, you need four players that can rotate in and out
Mm-hmm.
that are kind of equally talented. So that way, if there is an injury, it's not a huge loss. It still might be a little bit of a loss, but you have someone to rotate in to fill that time that they're out or whatever, and it doesn't disrupt the unity of the team.
Right. And that's why I think my favorite to win the NBA championship, who I had pulled as the favorite before the even year started, was the Boston Celtics. I think picking up Porzingis was huge for them. I think acquiring Drew Holiday was huge for them because you look at the Celtics, you got Tatum, Porzingis, Brown, Holiday, and Derek White, who are all five capable all-star players.
Hmm.
And then you have Al Horford, you got Peyton Pritchard, who are
Yep.
both good quality players. And then you got guys like, Hauser, who can shoot the ball. You got other guys like, Cornette, who's a rotational big who can come in, does his job, plays his role. So you got guys who fill in their role who come in, but you have seven guys, I think, for the Celtics. Seven guys that can be starters on 95% of the teams in the league. And when you have that, you have the home record, you have the coach, you have the GM, you have the front office like the Boston Celtics. And, they've been, through the playoffs. They've been in that championship. So they have a little bit of that taste. And I think, honestly, Jason Tatum is playing at an MVP level this year, and I think he should be up there in the MVP talk. It's not his fault that you have, you got Porzingis that's almost 20 a game, Brown that's 20 a game, you got Drew Holiday, but you're 48 and 13, and Tatum's still averaging, I think, 25, 26, with I think 8 and 5 or 6 and 5, something like that. So I think that plays a huge part when when you're the best team in the league, and you're the best player on the best team. I think
Hmm.
that should account for something because but again, you also look at it as if you take Tatum off the Celtics, I think they would still be a playoff team. I think they would still be a playoff team with Brown, Porzingis, Holiday. Would they be the first
Yeah.
seed, second
But
seed,
yeah,
yeah.
I was gonna say that the difference is if you do take him off the team, are they going to be the first seed? And if you look at the playoff standings, the Celtics are the only team who have clinched a playoff spot
Mm-hmm.
in the entire league. So that's got to count for something. To your point, like, yeah, he's got all those players. They got seven players that could start on every team in the league. but is he kind of like the leader of the seven? You know,
Right.
like your point, yeah, they'd probably still be in the playoffs, but what would they be in the play-in? Would they be in the top six? You know, how would that look if
Yep.
he wasn't there?
Right. Right. So I think the Magic are a scary team to play against right now. Um, the Bucks. I mean, the Bucks are really hit and miss right now. Um, I think. I think once they get it figured out consistently, they're a team that you definitely don't want to play with Dame Time, Greek Freak, guys like that, Chris Middleton,
Right.
Bobby Portis, Pat Bev. You got guys on the team that come playoff time, you want on your team. Um,
Right. Like we mentioned before, like you don't want to play them in the playoffs. They've been there recently. They know what they're doing, you know, and that goes a long way. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, I know some people like, oh, this is a young team. They've never been there. They're so hyped up. They've got all the energy. They're hungry. But it's like there's something to having some vets on that team, being on a team that's been there, done that. Who, yeah, are they still pumped up? Yeah, but they know how to kind of control that, level it out when it comes to game time. They're just going in and doing their job.
And if you say for the Pacers, for example, going in the playoffs, they can outscore and score with any team in the league. The biggest thing for them though is guarding, is the defensive end. And when it comes playoff time, you have to be able to play defense, because when it
Hmm.
comes down to those last 5-6 minutes in the game, when it's a 2-3 possession, the five
Yeah,
guys that are on the court are five guys that can get a stop and score the ball. Like they're not
yeah,
gonna, you're not gonna be on the floor.
right.
You're
And
not.
especially with all the rules about playing defense in the league now and all that stuff, you can only outscore your opponents so long, especially once you get to the playoffs. Who
Yep.
probably the majority of the teams already are scoring 100 plus,
Right.
120 plus points a game. How are you going to keep that up through the entire playoffs?
Right. Right. So it just, I think, this is an exciting time. I think that play-in tournament, I think, is a huge thing for NBA viewership for the fans, because I
Oh yeah,
think,
the NBA is so happy with the Western Conference right now. Like you, to your point, those play-in games, if it started now, would be must-watch TV for
yeah,
any NBA fan.
yeah. Because you look at 4 or 5 years ago, towards the end of the season, if a team, a few of those teams, if they made
They
the
start,
playoffs, they're setting people. You're resting guys. You got guys that are so, and no one wants to get on TV and watch the 9 through 14 guys on the roster start the
yeah,
game, play 40
that
minutes.
that are on the opposite end of the spectrum. Teams just tank for
Yep.
better draft position, which
Right.
is equally as boring to watch. Like, who wants to watch basketball where one team is playing, one team is just like, might as well get a better draft pick.
Yep. Yep. You're right. You're right. So I think that play-in tournament is huge. I think there's a lot to go into it. Obviously, I think there's. I want to say there's, what, 16 to 20 games left in the season. I want to
What,
say.
50, 61? Yeah.
I don't think there's a whole. There's not a whole lot. Um,
Yeah, because most teams have played like 61 or 62 games, so.
right, right. So I think it'll be super interesting. So, um, I think it's a great time. But I don't know. I kind of want to get your thoughts on something else. I don't know if you watched All Star Weekend at all this last year, or not last year, this last month at all.
Yeah, I mean, I watched some of it. It's not really, it doesn't portray how good these players are. It should just be called like playground basketball, not All-Star Week.
Yeah, it's, to be honest. So growing up as a kid, the All Star Weekend was one of my favorite weekends of the year. Watching all the different competitions, watching the All Star game. I remember watching, MJ versus Kobe. I remember watching Allen Iverson, KG, Paul Pierce, Dirk Nowitzki, Devin Harris. The list goes on. All these guys, Dwayne Wade, that you know yeah, they still, would go around and, place, alley oops, things like that, would joke around, but the game was still there's still some competitiveness.
It
There's
still looked like a basketball game.
right when MJ and Kobe play going one on one with each other. They took that stuff to heart,
Yeah,
and
I mean, if you watch The Last Dance, I mean, you all those guys talk about how like it didn't matter if it was practice, the All-Star game, the Olympics, the NBA regular season, preseason, playoffs, like they all wanted to win.
yeah,
I mean, you hear about how in practice everybody they'd get in fights about the score, about who's winning, about whether it was a foul or not. It's like these guys should be showing their careers on the line and their competitiveness. I mean, I feel like all the all stars across the sports, the all star like weekends, weekday, whatever, Pro Bowl, they're just like, who wants to watch them?
and
Like,
I
who wants to watch professional football players play dodgeball?
yeah, and
Like,
I
remember in like the early '90s when they had like longest throw contest and like
mhm,
longest punt contest? It's
yep,
like, they're still competing and they're doing what they're getting paid to do, but it's still like competitive.
hmm
And it's just like I don't know. I agree 100%. It's like I'd rather I get more entertainment out of watching the celebrity basketball game than the All Star game in the NBA.
yeah, and like I get to an extent, like obviously you don't want to go full bore. I get it's a break. I get it's a break from your 80 game season and whatnot. So I get not going 100%. I get not going, but I say going at least 80, 85% to where,
Yeah,
especially the last few minutes of the game, that's when you buckle down, and
yeah,
things of that nature. But the 3-point contest, I mean, that's always been one of my favorite things to watch, just because I feel like the 3-point contest is now the biggest hit of All Star Weekend now,
yeah,
because it's the most competitive. You got guys out there that were wanting to hit shots, wanting to bring
yeah.
home that trophy. The dunk contest, I don't think's ever been the same since Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon. I think ever since then, the judges have been god awful. I think the contestants, besides Matt McClung, obviously he's come in the last couple of years, G Leaguer, and won the dunk contest and whatnot. So props to him. But you used to see guys like Vince Carter, Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, guys like that. And so it was really neat to see like Zion, the other day in the press conference they asked, he said, if I make the All-Star team, yeah, I'll do the dunk contest. He goes, but I'm just not going to do the dunk contest and travel to All-Star Weekend just to do one contest. So it'd
Yeah,
be cool to see, like Zion would be one of the top guys that I would want to see in the dunk contest. And
yeah,
I don't think there's without any doubt that he wouldn't be, if he's playing and healthy, I don't see why he wouldn't be an All-Star player. So I
right.
mean, that's pretty neat. And obviously with All Star Weekend this last month, it was held here in Indy, and so that was pretty cool. I mean, just to see Indianapolis get some love and whatnot. And, we've held the Super Bowl, we hold the NFL Combine, March Madness, Big Ten National Championship for college football, basketball, all that kind of stuff. So Indianapolis is a sports town. It has the National Collegiate Hall of Fame. Indy 500. So, if you're not from Indiana, a lot of people think, oh, it's all cornfields and everything, which, a lot of Indiana is cornfields and countryside and things of that stuff. But, there's a lot of parts in,
Yeah,
Indiana, like Indianapolis,
and there is a lot of sports history in Indiana.
big time. And especially basketball. You got Larry Bird, you got Oscar Robertson, and list goes on who've come out of Indiana to
Yeah,
the hoop. And so
yeah.
Indiana is where basketball was born and raised. So it was really cool to see All Star Weekend there. Um, I definitely though want to see in the future the dunk contest and the All Star
Do
game get
do
back to.
NBA players get bonuses if they're on the All Star team or participate?
Uh, I can't remember. I'm not sure if they do or not. I know if they make the all NBA teams, or they get certain awards and that kind of stuff. Yeah, they get bonuses. But I don't know if making the All Star team. Um, I'm not sure if they do or not. That's a good question. If not, I feel like that could be a good incentive to get guys to hoop and play. Be like, hey, winner of this team, each player gets. I know the winning coach, gets a check for
Uh,
All-Star game.
each member of the winning team would earn $50,000 as a bonus, and that was so now I guess now they get 100,000, and the losing team members get 25,000.
Oh, okay, okay. So that's pretty decent.
Yeah, the 3-point contest winner $50,000. See, there's a dunk contest because let's see. See the slam dunk contest, you get $100,000. Runner up gets 50, third and fourth gets 20,000. I know that's not a ton of money to them, but it's like you basically go party for what 4 days, and then if you're only on the slam dunk contest, you get to do that one day and then just watch everything else. Like, why the hell wouldn't you?
Right, right. Yeah. Obviously the weather in Indianapolis in February isn't obviously the grandest. I mean, it's not like Miami or Phoenix or LA, but still, I
Right.
mean, there's a lot of
There's
things.
enough to do.
Yeah,
There's enough
yeah,
to do, especially when you've got a fat bankroll.
right. Yeah.
I mean,
So
even if you win and spend 20 grand that weekend, you basically had a free weekend of partying with all NBA players and get to do whatever you want. So,
right, right. Yeah. So I'm definitely. I mean, this is like I said, this is a good time for NBA basketball. I think it's a great time to watch it. I mean, like tonight, I mean, like the Pacers play the Timberwolves. You got the Mavericks. They play tonight, which is this is I feel like a must-win tonight for the Mavericks. They lost another couple games in a row. Lost to the Pacers the other night. Lost to the Sixers. So this I feel like tonight's a must-win for them to get back on track with things. Warriors, like I said, won last night. They play again tonight, I believe. So they're on the right track. I feel like this is the time where you really need to figure out where you're at, because I feel like going into playoffs, if you're going into the playoffs on a winning streak, if you're going with high momentum and you're feeling yourself, I feel like that's a team that's tough to
that's the
beat.
scariest team to play. It's the
Yeah,
scariest team to play.
yeah,
Who everybody doubted, are they gonna make it? If they are, they get barely gonna squeak in, and they win their last 5 games or something, get in the playoffs on a roll. That's a team that feels confident playing together, and it's hard to break them down.
hmm no, I agree. Because you don't want to lose 4 or 5 games in a row going into a play-in tournament and then having to face like guys like Luka and Kyrie
Hmm.
or LeBron, or you look at the Pacers, a team that can drop 150 points on you.
Yeah,
So I mean, a lot of it has to do with matchups too. I mean, each team I feel like has its own kryptonite to where they play a certain team. When you look at the Suns and Mavericks, I feel like Luka is the Suns' kryptonite. When the Dallas Mavericks and Luka play the Suns, I feel like that's a hump that the Suns can't get over. I feel like the Warriors, they play. They're such a fast-paced team. They don't have a lot of bigs. They can shoot. They get in transition, and so when they play a team like Denver with Jokic and Aaron Gordon and guys like that, they struggle a little bit more. But when they play teams like the Kings, who tend to give other teams trouble, they tend to do better against teams like that. So I think matchups are huge going into playoffs. So I think that'll also play a big role in seeing who goes forward.
yeah,
But again, I still think the Celtics are my favorite unless anything drastic happens. I don't see anybody in the East really. I see the Bucks if they're playing well. I see the Pacers if they can defend at a consistent basis. They're a team that can score with the Celtics. They beat the Celtics in the in-season tournament. Earlier in the year. They beat the Bucks. The Pacers. I mean, and that's a prime example with the Indiana Pacers. When they play teams like the Celtics, the Bucks, you know, Wolves, things like that, they play their best basketball. They play to win, and they have a good chance to win. But for some reason, when they play the San Antonio Spurs, when they play Charlotte
All the
Hornets,
games they're supposed to beat, all the teams they're supposed to beat,
yeah,
they play like crap. Yeah.
they play like crap. I don't know what it is with the Charlotte Hornets, but I swear every time we freaking play them, we just we just crap the bed. So it just,
Yeah.
I mean, it just happens. So there's a lot of good basketball coming up, and while we're talking basketball, ACC tournament, Big Ten tournament, all the conference tournaments are starting in the next couple days. And so
Yep.
that is huge for teams to see who gets those bids in the March Madness tournament. I'm interested to see who's the four number one seeds. I'm interested to see who comes out of that. Like for Big Ten, for example, IU, last couple games, playing IU basketball, they beat Minnesota, they beat Maryland. So they're coming into that Big Ten tournament at the right time playing good basketball. Do I see them winning the big tournament? No, definitely not. But I feel like that's a team that's scary to play going into that tournament. So, my team, Louisville Cardinals, we got Florida State first game. We beat Florida State earlier in the season, but I don't really have a whole lot of confidence in us. Hopefully we don't have. Hopefully our head coach change is coming at the end of the year. I hate to say that, but you know what? Been watching this train wreck for the last few years, and when you have, I can't. It's hard to watch when you watch Louisville basketball for years, and you were it's Louisville basketball. You have one of the best college gym arenas in the nation.
Yeah.
You have the best
They're
environments.
their organization and their locker room, weight room is just out of this
Yeah.
world. It's insane.
Yeah, when you got guys the history of Louisville, just not with basketball, with the football team, baseball, they're a winning program. And when you are not a winning program for 3 years straight, and it's not by only a 1, 2, 3, 4 games, when you win 3 games in a freaking season and you got
Yeah.
8 games, that's, come on now. And so I feel like there definitely needs to be a change. There's some great coaches out there. Guys are gonna want to come to play at Louisville. Louisville is a place to play at, and
They should want to come to Louisville.
yeah, yeah, right. When you're at Louisville, you're in the ACC conference. And that's the other thing you look at, and you come to the ACC. Not only are you, say you play for Louisville. Not only are you playing at Louisville, you're going to be playing at Duke. You're going to be playing North Carolina.
Right.
Virginia Tech, Miami, Notre Dame. You're playing at the best venues in the nation. You're playing against some of the best teams in the whole nation, history of programs. Notre Dame, I feel like, has one of the most beautiful gymnasiums basketball. I feel it's very
Yeah.
I love it just because there's not a bad seat in the house. I feel like you can sit towards the very top and you can still see the perfect view. I love the 4-leaf clover that's on the court.
Yeah.
I think the design and I think the history of Notre Dame, obviously.
They definitely have the history going on for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Obviously, it's more of a football school. Obviously the stadium, the football stadium, touchdown Jesus and everything. That's the bigger picture over there. But I feel like Notre Dame doesn't get a lot of hype for their gymnasium.
well, it's because they do the same thing every single year since for the last 25 years. They do enough to get in the tournament, and then they either lose in the first or second round every time. There's no hype for it because you just expect them to do what they always do, lay an egg.
Remember when they used to have Luke Herringody? They had guys like
Mm-hmm.
Pat Conahan, who's on the Bucks. He's playing well. He's a guy that's really made a name for himself in the NBA and has earned himself a lot of money. And he plays. He actually plays, and he could have been an MLB player. So that was really neat to see him make it to the league. But
yeah, they always have good players that go to the NBA and are successful. It's just they can't put it together. They just can't.
Yeah, and so other teams that are in the ACC, you got like Florida State, Clemson. If I'm a college basketball player, there's not one team in the ACC that I would not want to play against or play at just because of their rich history or the teams in the conference. And I feel that the same way the Big Ten, and I feel the same way, same way in the SEC. Obviously, I can't stand Kentucky because I'm a Louisville fan, and I would never, ever, ever, ever set foot on Rupp Arena.
Oh, you gotta go there and just rep your team.
That's true. I did that when I went to at Notre Dame. I didn't remember I made Sarah take a picture in front of the gym after we beat Notre Dame, and I'm holding up the L's, and all the Cardinals fans that were there were like, "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about."
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think you got the SEC, you got Florida, Kentucky, you got teams that are coming out of there. I mean, you got the Big East. I mean, there's so many teams going in. You got UConn. You got the Big 12 with Kansas. I mean, there's just so many teams. Iowa State is such a good team at home to where they never lose at home. I mean, there's so many teams out there that I think this year, like for example, talking about college basketball, on the men's side, you have guys like Zach Edey, and you have some guys that you're well known that about. Even if you didn't watch college basketball, you've heard that name, stuff like that. But nothing has compared to the women's side of college basketball and Caitlin Clark,
Yeah.
because no matter who you are on this planet, I feel like everybody has heard the name Caitlin Clark. And what's been
Yeah.
crazy is the crowds that she has drawn. Like, I mean, I'm seeing videos of her playing at Nebraska and Minnesota, and it's sold out crowds, and crowds that are lined up miles and miles outside the arena just to watch her play. It's been crazy. And there hasn't been, I think, a men's college basketball player that's drawn a crowd like that in years. In years.
Yeah.
It's been wild. And she's no joke. She's pulling up from 30 plus deep. I mean, and she's leading the D1 in assists. Not only is she's the leader in points for both women's and men's college history, but for the women's side of things, she's leading D1 in assists. They're top 5 team in the league. They're a team that's a national title defender. So it's not like it's just one. It's not like she's just a player just making shots. So.
Yeah.
That's
And
been,
the sad thing is she's probably going to go number 1 overall, right?
Yep.
And she's going to make like $76,000 a year for playing in the WNBA.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think
that's it.
Yeah, that's the bad thing.
And
is this,
if she's rookie of the year, she'll get another $5,000.
The good thing
that's terrible.
Yeah. The good thing is with Caitlin Clark, she has so many side deals with her. She's already in commercials. She has all the NIL deals. She's already in like I said, she's already in commercials. She's gonna have a signature shoe deal. You got women in there like Sabrina Ionescu. You got girls that are in the league that do have their own shoe deals, that are in their own commercials, have their own brands. That Candace Parker, is a TNT announcer. You got women like that. Sue Bird, who's retired now, who they make a majority of their money on that kind of stuff. But to your point, I mean, if you're not a top caliber player, you're making the same amount of money as if you're working the offices here at a normal 9 to 5 job.
And it's sad too, because you're right, it will open more doors and she'll make plenty of money, she'll get endorsements, but she shouldn't have to. Like endorsements and all that stuff should just be like a side gig, not I have to do this to make what I deserve to be making. Right. I don't care if you're male or female or not. Like, it's just like a few years ago when everybody was talking about the women's U.S. soccer team.
Yep.
They're the only ones who give the U.S. any like chance at like being worldly known soccer team, and they're getting paid like a third of what the men get paid.
Right.
And it's like they're representing us better than all the men's teams for the last 30 years, but
Right, and I think over the last few years, the WNBA has gotten a lot more viewership. I think they've gotten a lot more attraction and attention. I think Kobe Bryant was a huge advocate for the WNBA to where he brought a lot more attention and viewership towards the WNBA, but also, um, for example, in the last few years, like, WNBA teams they're getting their own gymnasiums. They have starting to get their own arenas. Their jerseys
Yeah.
they have 3 or 4 different jerseys. The different court styles. WNBA, they're adding another franchise. The Warriors are going to have a WNBA team coming up. But
Yeah.
I think now too, you got women in the league like Kelsey Plum and Sophie Cunningham. You got girls in the league like Asia Wilson, Kelsey Mitchell, all these women in the league now, Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart. I mean, the list goes on who are phenomenal women's basketball players,
Yeah.
and the games are more exciting to watch. I mean, I've watched a good amount of women's basketball these last few years just because it's gotten a lot better. There's more viewership. The games are. The other thing is when you watch the game, I love watching, a home team when the crowd's in it, the crowd's packed, it's a sold out arena, and they're hitting, 2, 3 threes in a row or whatever the case, and the crowd's into it, and like the emotion, the atmosphere. A lot of that brings in a lot of viewers and fans because no one wants to really
Hmm.
turn on the game and you see 10, 12, 15 fans in the stands,
Right.
and it's almost like you're watching like an open gym run type deal.
Right.
And I think the last few years they're starting to get more of the recognition that they deserve, which they truly do. And I'm hoping that the revenue follows through and that increases like their that increases their
Yeah.
salary, that increases the money for their contracts, that allows them to have more deals, that allows him to make more money. That way they don't have to play overseas, they don't have to
Hmm.
work a second or third job, and because again, they have to train, they have to take care of their bodies, they have to travel, they have to I mean, all that stuff still comes into play,
Yeah.
so they got to do that. So I think it'll
Yeah.
be
And that's a good point that you made with like the training, and they have to take care of themselves. They should have all the same
same.
benefits
Yep,
and resources that the men have.
100%. They
Like,
should.
why should they not be able to take care of their bodies as well as other professional athletes just because they're female instead of male?
Right, right.
And that'd be like, you or I going to the doctor and then Sarah going in and be like, oh, sorry, I know your husband was just in here and got this, this, and this, but you're a female, so you can't act. We can't do that for you.
Right, right. So I'm hoping that they get what they deserve. Because like I said, the
Yeah.
game has really evolved. Not just for the men's side, but for the women's side, I think a lot. Like I said, you see a lot more of the NBA players at the women's games. You see a lot more
Hmm.
celebrities now at the women's games. And 15, 20 years ago, you didn't see that.
Right.
You didn't see that. And so I think that's huge. And for me, um, the Indiana Fever have the #1 pick. So
There
Caitlin
you go.
Clark's going to be going to the Fever, along with last year's Rookie of the Year, Aaliyah Boston, along with Kelsey Mitchell, um, and Lexi Hole. So I think the Fever have a really good chance. Not saying that they're going to be championship level, because when you're playing teams like the Aces, you got you have Asia Wilson and Alicia Clark and Kelsey Plum, and the list goes on. You got
Right.
other teams out there. The Seattle Storm. They picked up Skylar Diggins Smith. To go on their team. So, like I said, you got teams out there that are pretty stacked. But I think for Indiana basketball and the Fever, I feel like that is huge for them. And I think Clayton Clark is going to bring a huge crowd with her in the
100%.
WNBA. I think she has now set a name and a tone to where I think coming into the WNBA, even and this is me looking at it as a business standpoint, even if Caitlin Clark wasn't as good as she was, she would be in my head as a GM to be as a pick on a team because of the amount of people she's going to bring
As
in.
as shallow as it sounds, as a money draw,
Yeah,
as to gain recognition for your team, but also the sport in general.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think I think that'll be pretty. It'll be pretty neat. So there's a lot of stuff going on. You know, you got like I said, you. This is exciting basketball time. This is when you're a basketball player, basketball fan. This is like my favorite time of the year for basketball because you got conference tournament, March Madness. You got towards the end of the NBA season. You got playoffs going to be starting all around the same time. So I mean, it's basketball, basketball, basketball. On TV, news, standings, all that kind of stuff. So this is one of my favorite times of the year. So I'm really excited to see over the next couple weeks all the different changes and what really happens in the next couple weeks. Not just
Yeah.
for women's, but for men's, both college and NBA. Because, like I said, it'll be. Whew, last thing,
Yeah.
college ball. If you could pick a winner, who you
Oh
think?
gosh.
I don't know how much you've watched this year. If do you have a front runner for women's and college basketball, and then do you have a front runner coming out of the West and East for NBA?
For college basketball, no, I'm not even going to do that till I see the brackets.
Okay.
So I'm not even going to do that.
Okay.
But I agree with you. The Celtics probably have the best chance in the East. But I would love to see Boston and the Milwaukee Bucks go head to head
Mm-hmm.
to see who can get to the finals. And then, dude, the Western Conference is so up for grabs. Like, I don't trust the rankings at all.
Yeah.
I don't trust them. Like we talked about, I mean, if the Lakers and Warriors get hot and they make the playoffs, I mean, I don't know. I, I mean, I would like to see a team like Phoenix or something do it just because they haven't in so long and, blah, 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 that story. But I mean, I think even though they're all in the playoff tournament, I think it's going to be the Mavericks, Warriors, or Lakers that are going to get to the finals. I just don't trust the top six who are in playoff position right now.
Right.
But as far as like a winner, I don't know out of the Western.
Right. Say for college ball, obviously I'll start with the women's side. I think obviously with having a girl like Caitlin Clark and having a solid team around her, I feel like them. I obviously have them as a runner on the women's side. Obviously you have LSU. I have Louisville. IU women's basketball are going to be in the back of
Hmm.
your head. Ohio State has a good team as well. For the men's side, I definitely have UConn up there. I had them last year, and then I have Kansas up there. I feel like they're always a team, especially when it comes tournament time. They play the right kind of ball. They have the right kind of roster. You have the coach. You have the experience. So that's always a team that you do not want to play when it comes tournament time.
Yeah. And I feel
Um,
like too in college more than the pros, an experienced coach is more important than
yep.
experienced players.
Right.
So,
Right.
like to your point, Kansas, they've got a coach who's been there, done
Bill
that, who
Self.
knows how
Yep.
to work with kids. He can kind of be a, I don't know, not dad, but be someone who kind of controls the locker room a little more.
Right. Right. So I agree. And then on the NBA side of things, obviously I have the Celtics coming out of the East. I have them winning the whole thing. But like I said, on the West, it is tricky. On the West, like I said, it could, man, it could really come out. It could go multiple different directions in the West. Um, I don't know. See that's the West is tough because like because this is the way
All
I
right,
look at yeah.
I got a loaded question for you for the West. So let's say the Lakers go on a run. They either make the playoffs, win the play-in tournament, go to the finals, win the finals. You are happy LeBron got another one. You're upset that LeBron got one, or you think LeBron's done if he wins the finals this year.
I'm not really a big LeBron fan, basketball wise. I think he's a fantastic person. I think him coming into the league and all the stuff he's been able to do is incredible. But I'm an MJ GOAT fan.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't need. That's not even a
Yeah,
discussion. He is the goat.
and with me being a Pacers fan for such a longest time and watching LeBron and when he was on the Heat or the Cavs beat PG and the Pacers for years. So I don't think he'd retire if he won another one this year. I know he wants to play with his son.
Yeah.
But I think so. This is the way I look at things in the West because I'll kind of just narrow it down at the. This is how I'll narrow it down. I look at the Timberwolves this way. I think they were a great team going into the playoffs. I think the injury to Karl Anthony Towns is going to be a huge part with that. I feel like that's a player you cannot lose if you're the Timberwolves. When he's in, 25 point per game scorer who is a guy that can get you a bucket down the stretch. I know you still got Anthony Edwards. But again, without having Karl Anthony Towns, I don't think they're a team that can win the championship or come out of the West now. I look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. I feel like they can come out of the West. I feel like they're a championship contending team. I think it also depends on the matchup because, none of these – I mean, you picked up a veteran like Gordon Hayward who has playoff experience and stuff like that. But you go down the list of everybody else on that team. Very young, no experience. So going into the playoffs, it could be a different caliber. Especially when you're going against guys like Steph Curry, guys that have been in the playoffs for the last 10, 12 years. The Nuggets, I think they're a championship contending team. I feel like the Nuggets, especially at home, I mean, their home record's 24-6. They're a tough team to beat at home. I feel like there's nobody in the league that can guard Jokic. Guy shoots the ball from right here. I mean, there's just nothing you can do about it. The Clippers. Now, this is a team where can go either way. If they're fully healthy, because Westbrook is out for the next couple weeks, you got Westbrook, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden. You got 4 guys on that team who I think should all be in the Hall of Fame at some point in their career. When it's all said and done, I think all 4 of them are Hall of Famers. I believe that that's a team that would be extremely hard to beat, especially down the stretch. If it's Game 7 and you step on the court and the 5 across from you is Norman Powell, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George. That's going to be
that's intimidating.
Yeah,
that's intimidating.
Yeah, especially in the playoff. If it's Game 7, and you're the Thunder, you're the Timberwolves, the Kings, whoever. That's going to be, I feel like, a tipping point. Pelicans and Suns, I feel like it just depends on if they're healthy or not. Both of them, I think they've been their injuries, they've been inconsistent. They're up and they're down. So I feel like it can go really either way. I think the Pelicans are a scary team because they can play defense and they can put the ball in the rim. So that is a tough team, but if the playoffs started today, they would be playing the Clippers, and I don't see the Pelicans getting past the Clippers with those 4 caliber guys. But going into the play-in tournament, this is the last thing I'll say with these 4 teams. These are the 4 teams. So
I like how you really narrowed that down on the West.
Yeah.
You just explained how every team could have a chance to get to the finals.
The Kings, I don't think the Kings are a championship contending team. I think they are a playoff team. I think they're a team that can get a few wins. I think they could win a first round. I don't think after that, I think they're just one more piece away. I mean, having a guy like Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, I think is key. But I think having one more bucket getter is big for them. Dallas. They could be a championship contending team, but again, their inconsistencies, they can score the ball with anybody. I mean, when you have Luka and Kyrie, you have two of the top 5, I think, best one-on-one bucket getters in the league. I mean, Kyrie, his handles, his shot making. Luka, I mean, it's just unreal. I mean, you watch LeBron say Luka's his favorite player to watch when he's not playing, just because it's unreal watching him play basketball.
Right.
The thing is with them, they're just like the Pacers. They don't play defense at times. And, over the last 5 games, they're allowing 129 points per game. So going again in the playoffs, they have to play defense. And for the last 2 teams, the Warriors and Lakers, the biggest thing that they have both going for them is they both have extravagant and extensive playoff experience. You have LeBron, you have Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Chris Paul. You got D'Angelo Russell. The list goes on with those caliber players. You have a lot of playoff experience right there.
Yeah.
And so for them being in the play-in tournament, I don't think it doesn't scare them as much as I think it would another team. Now, do they want to be there? No. I think right now with LeBron's injury, I think that it's going to be pretty set in stone that the Lakers have that 10th spot. I don't see them going up to 9 or 8 with LeBron being out right now. And with the Warriors played like they did last night, I think 6 through 8 is going to be 5 through 8 5 through 9 actually are going to be the biggest change. You got the Pelicans through the Warriors, and it's really, it's 3.5 games between 5 and 9.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be huge. So I think honestly the play-in tournament is going to be big. Whoever ends up in the play-in tournament, I feel like is going to come in and win that first round. No matter, I'm going to make a call on that. Whoever one of the 2 teams who come out of the play-in tournament, whether it's the Kings, Mavericks, Warriors, or Lakers, will win one of those 2 teams will win their first round series. I can almost guarantee you that.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
So. But yeah, it's hard to, the West, I just went through it. The West is it's just out there. It's just up in the air. There's nobody like, the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team who have Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Sign Ohtani and everybody else in the freaking world this year. So I think I'm excited. It's nice to be able to watch NBA basketball the last few weeks of the season and not be like, oh, yeah, it's these teams playing, but half the team's not playing. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it'll be neat. So, but all righty. That was a lot of basketball talk. That was first basketball talk of the podcast since coming back. But like I said, this is an exciting time, and as soon as March Madness ends, you know what that means. NFL draft, football talk.
I was gonna say, which sport are you gonna talk about?
Yeah, baseball. That plays all the way until October.
I was waiting.
So, we can talk about
which direction are you gonna go?
Yeah, we can talk about baseball and stuff like that. But no, I'm excited. Football is obviously the sport that we both like to talk about, both I think on an equal level. I know I'm a lot basketball, and you've had topics like Star Wars and stuff like that. So I think
represent.
Yeah. So I think that talking football wise, we're both equally invested in that.
We can get into all sports to a certain extent, but football for sure is the one that you've seen it. We can get into some heated debates sometime, but
right,
it's all good.
But we're glad to be back,
so.
And I had to put on a little Grayson Waller for you guys, a little Grayson Waller effect. If you don't know who Grayson Waller is, Google him. That's all I'll say. So, till next time, I'll catch you later.
Deuces.